gain a place at a science college, students first have to pass a written test and a practical test. A student is allowed a maximum of 2 attempts in a written test. And the second attempt is only allowed if they fail the first test. The first written test, no student is allowed more than 1 attempt at the practical test. So they are only allowed 1 practical test. And if they fail both the written and the written test, then they cannot attempt the practical test. The probability that a student will pass the written test at the first attempt is 0.8. If a student fails at the first attempt, the probability that they will pass at the second attempt is 0.6. For a practical test, the probability of passing is always 0.3. Part A, draw a tree diagram to represent this information. So let's say W1 here represents the events of passing the first written test. And then the complement will be the events of failing the first written test. The probability of passing the first written test is 0.8. So the probability of failing is 0.2. If they pass the first written test, then they can attempt the practical test. So P represents the probability of passing the practical test. Probability of passing the practical test is 0.3, and probability of failing is 0.7. If they fail the first written test, then they can either pass the second written test or fail the second written test. The probability of passing the second written test is 0.6, and the probability of failing is 0.4. If they fail the second written test, out they go. If they pass the second written test, they will have to go through the practical test. Either they pass or they fail. Probability of passing is 0.3, and probability of failing is 0.7. That will give us a tree diagram. Part B, find the probability that a randomly chosen student will succeed in gaining a place at the college. To gain a place at the college, they have to pass the practical test finally. So these are the 2 branches that we need to look at to solve for part B. So S is the probability of succeeding in gaining a place at the college. And this is the probability of passing the first written test and the practical test, or probability of failing the first written test, passing the second written test, and passing the practical. That is 0.8 times 0.3. And for this case here, we have 0.2 times 0.6 times 0.3. And that is 0.276. Part C, find the probability that a randomly chosen student passes the written test at the first attempt. So we have probability of passing the written test at the first attempt, given that that is a conditional probability. The student succeeds in gaining a place at the college. That is a conditional probability. Then we can use the conditional probability formula. And this is the probability of passing the written test at the first attempt and gaining a place at the college over the probability of gaining a place at the college. So W1 intersect S is actually this branch here, which is 0.8 times 0.3 probability of success is 0.276. So that will give us 20/23.